28 days, with exactly 28 days left for New Jersey Governor Chris Christie to decide to jump into the Republican presidential race. Today, people are asking if he's in shape for that race. Friend of the show, Eugene Robinson, caused a ruckus on Morning Joe this morning with the first line of his Washington Post column. Whether or not he lets himself be persuaded to run for president, Chris Christie needs to find some way to lose weight. Like everyone else, elected officials perform best when they are in optimal health. Chris Christie obviously is not. Eugene Robinson's column says Christie's weight is a legitimate issue. Obesity is a national epidemic whose costs are measured not just in dollars and cents, but also in lives. Christie's weight is as legitimate an issue as the smoking habit that President Obama says he has finally kicked. Michael Kinsley, in his first column for Bloomberg View, was even more blunt in his opening line. Look, I'm sorry, but New Jersey Governor Chris Christie cannot be president. He is just too fat. Michael Kinsley, ever the learned and thoughtful liberal, admitted that's not a very liberal attitude. It's discriminatory, it's patronizing, it's coercive. Kinsley is less concerned with Christie's health than Gene Robinson is. For Kinsley, it's more about symbolism. The president inevitably sets an example. Unfortunately, the symbolism of Christie's weight problem goes way past the issue of obesity itself. It is just a too perfect symbol of our country at the moment, with appetites out of control and discipline near zilch. Perhaps Christie is the one to help us get our national appetites under control, but it would help if he got his own under control first. The candidates' filing deadline for the New Hampshire primary is 28 days away. With Republican World on edge about Chris Christie, 2 reports were published by reporters with reliable sources in Christie World. The New York Post reports Christie's renewed consideration about a White House run came after prodding this week from some Republicans he idolizes, including former First Lady Nancy Reagan, former Secretary of State Henry Kissinger, and former President George W. Bush, sources said. The New Jersey Star-Ledger adds, in addition, the governor's wife, Mary Pat, no longer objects to a presidential run, according to an advisor to the governor. A few months ago, former First Lady Barbara Bush called Mary Pat to assuage her concerns about life in the White House, the advisor said. The Christie excitement surge continues, even though there have been exactly no national polls that show Christie's support level among the current Republican field of candidates. More importantly, Christie has not been included in any of the key early state primary polls. The latest New Hampshire poll, for example, shows Mitt Romney with a commanding lead there with 41% of the vote. Rick Perry runs fourth in New Hampshire with 8% of the vote. The latest South Carolina poll shows Perry essentially tied with Romney, a slight lead within the margin of error. And the latest Florida poll shows Perry 9 points ahead of Mitt Romney. There is, at this point, simply no polling evidence to indicate how Christie would do if he entered the Republican presidential campaign. The first thing Governor Christie would have to do if he announces his candidacy is lie. He would have to tell the lie that he is ready to be president, or explain why he was lying when he said this.
You got to believe in your heart that you are ready to walk into the Oval Office and to lead the nation. And I don't feel like I'm ready.
I don't feel ready in my heart to be president.
I don't feel like I'm ready to be president.
I simply do not have the desire to do it, nor do I think I'm ready.
Joining me now is Ed Rollins, a Republican political consultant and former top political advisor to President Reagan, and Jonathan Alter, a columnist for the Bloomberg View and an MSNBC political analyst and a constituent of Governor Christie.
Right. That's right.
Thank you both very much for joining me tonight. Ed Rollins, I want you to take a look at a commercial that John Corzine ran in that last campaign, trying to use Christie's weight as an issue. Let's take a look at that commercial.
If you drove the wrong way down a one-way street, causing an accident and putting the victim in a trauma center, would you get away without a ticket? Chris Christie did. If you were caught speeding in an unregistered car, would you get away without points? Chris Christie did. In both cases, Christie threw his weight around as U.S. attorney and got off easy. If you didn't pay your taxes, ignored ethics laws, would you get away with it? Chris Christie. One set of rules for himself, another for everyone else.
Ed, as we know, that ad didn't play very well in New Jersey. But what about this issue? It's one thing for a campaign to bring it up, as Corzine did, which was kind of ham-handed. But you can't stop these columnists from bringing it up.
Well, as a fat man myself, want to lose 30 or 40 pounds, and just having gone through a campaign, it's a very tedious, very tiring process. And my concern for the governor, and I don't know whether he's going to get in or not get in, is that he needs to get in some kind of shape. My last advice to my friend Mike Huckabee, whose campaign I chaired 4 years ago, who had lost 100 pounds before he started running, is he needs to get 40 pounds off if he was going to make the race. Haley Barbour, when he was thinking about running, lost 35 pounds. You need to basically be in some kind of shape, and obviously, at the end of the day, that's not what's going to move his candidacy forward or not, but it's a distraction. We're sitting here talking about it today as opposed to all the positive things that he may have done.
All right, let's listen to what Chris Christie himself has said about his weight.
The weight exacerbates everything. You know, I've been pretty candid about that right from, the start of my public career. My asthma doctors always told me, like all my other doctors have told me, that the lighter I am, the healthier I'll be.
Jonathan Alter, it was bound to come up, and here it is, and you have Ed Rollins telling us that campaign professionals with candidates like Christie, Mike Huckabee, in the back room talk about it, give advice on it, say this is what you got to do. What should Christie do if he's going to get into this race in terms of, he obviously can't lose weight fast enough in the 28 days, but I mean, it seems like at some point he would have to address it.
I think he will. Look, you have to draw a distinction between whether the weight will be a political issue, and I don't think it really will be in the Republican primaries, and whether it will inhibit him as an effective candidate. And there I really do agree with Ed. This is a distance event. It's a marathon. It is so tiring to be on and off airplanes 6 days a week. Then when he gets back for 12 hours to New Jersey, he has to run the state, and then he's back on an airplane. And I know that, for reporters, we are exhausted when we go out with these candidates. The successful ones have some kind of special gene that lets them seem fresh as a daisy when they're really exhausted. I'm not sure that you can have that gene and have that kind of weight. So I think what he will do is he'll announce that he's going on some kind of a diet, and then it'll be like Oprah's diet. He'll actually get some fans as they chart his progress, assuming that he's somewhat successful.
Ed Rollins, if Chris Christie were to jump into this thing now, is there Republican political campaign staff talent available to him? You have Rick Perry pulling in staff. You have Mitt Romney with a lot of hired staff. I don't know the Republican staff bench out there who are available, who are willing to do it. I mean, for example, is Ed Rollins available to the Christie campaign?
Ed Rollins is done. He did his stint for the last 3 months, so he's old and retired. There are talent. It's the key thing is he's got a couple people around him who've done his campaigns that are pretty top notch, but you got to have people in Iowa, South Carolina, New Hampshire, building a big organization, raising money, doing all the kinds of things. You can't do it in 30 days. Perry has been in the race now for 5 or 6 weeks. He's still struggling. He had people who are all prepared to do Gingrich's race. They've been doing this for 6 months or a year. It takes time to put all the apparatus together, and at the end of the day, to raise the money, to compete, 5 months from now, voters start voting, and to be ready to go, plus having a full-time job, which would worry me, with a Democrat legislature. The other thing that's not been talked about is New Jersey has its assembly races and Senate races in this November. So he's out on the campaign trail basically campaigning for himself, raising money for himself. And if for some reason Democrats have a majority in both of those houses and they add to that majority, there's going to be a lot of very unhappy Republicans in New Jersey where he has to eventually come back to.
All right, let's take a look at some of the issues he would have a serious problem with in a Republican presidential primary. First of all, we're going to hear from one of his New Jersey constituents who has a problem with Christie on immigration. Let's listen to what Lou Dobbs had to say about Christie.
Is out of his mind. He says it isn't a crime to be in this country illegally. U.S. Attorney Christopher Christie of New Jersey says the simple act of being in this country without proper documentation is not a crime. His words. This is the kind of arrogance, incompetence, and cuteness that we really need a lot of in federal government. This man is an utter embarrassment.
John Alter, you'll be seeing a lot of that tape, 2008 tape of back when Christie was U.S. Attorney. You'll see a lot of that if Christie jumps in the race. Absolutely. You'll also see a lot of the tape that you showed earlier of his saying, "I'm not ready." That's really a problem for him. He'll be asked by every reporter about the "I'm not ready" comment, and he'll be challenged by every other Republican candidate on immigration. Look at the heat that Rick Perry is taking, and he's been quite tough on the border, but they got him on this one issue that relates to the children of immigrants who've done nothing wrong at all, of illegals, going to the University of Texas. So it will be open season on Christie on immigration. I think a series of other social issues. Look, to survive in the Northeast as a Republican, you have to be fairly progressive on social issues, and that puts him out of step with a lot of the conservative base. Ed Rollins, I want you to listen to a piece of tape where he had a little bit of a disagreement with Sean Hannity, where Christie sounds a little bit too much like President Obama on gun control.
Are there any issues where you are, quote, moderate to left as a Republican?
Well, listen, I favor some of the gun control measures we have in New Jersey.
Yeah, bad idea.
Listen, we have a densely populated state, and there's a big handgun problem in New Jersey. Certain gun control issues, looking at it from a law enforcement perspective, seeing how many police officers were killed, we have an illegal gun problem in New Jersey. What I support are common sense laws that will allow people to protect themselves. But I also am very concerned about the safety of our police officers on the streets. Very concerned, and I want to make sure that we don't have an abundance of guns out there.
Ed Rollins, how does that play to Republican voters in Iowa and South Carolina? And New Hampshire, not very well. And equally as important, that needs to be defined. He refused to fill out the NRA questionnaire when he was running for governor. And you have to remember, this guy, when he ran against one of the most unpopular governors in the country when he beat Corzine, and so the commercial that you showed earlier about him getting exemptions for certain things and being overweight may not have had any impact because that guy was going to be defeated, Corzine. This is going to be a tough, rough battle, and I think he's one of the superstars of our party. I think he's been a great governor in New Jersey. He's only been in there a short period of time. And the national media are going to have a field day on him, just as they have on Perry, and they're going to look at every element of his life. And you may be able to handle the Trenton press, and you may be able to handle the New York press, not that they're not tough, but you get into a presidential campaign, they look at every element of your life, and the bottom line, it's a tough, tough game. Hope he runs, though. Hope he runs, because it'll be good for the Republican Party. They're going off the rails, Lawrence, and this might help them come back to some degree of sanity, so I hope he jumps in.